So the buzz on the street is there's a new Italian battleship and it's pretty potent, so we had to check it out for ourselves, and the Lepanto does not disappoint. Semi-armor piercing secondaries. We knew they were strong from our days with Francesco at tier 6 and the Veneto at tier 7, but really it finally comes alive at tier 8. Contrary to the PC version of World of Warships, these battleships in our game have normal guns and SAP secondaries, and of course the normal exhaust smoke consumable. To see what makes the Lepanto great, one only needs to look at the secondary armament and their reload times. With our build, we get a 2.8 second reload on the 90mm guns and 4 seconds on the larger 152s. The SAP DPM of one side of Lepanto is over 1 million, which would be really one of the highest DPM values I believe I've ever seen in this game. The Colbert having the highest previous DPM, I suppose, with the AP shells of 780,000 or so. Granted, these numbers are theoretical because, of course, it would have to be full pins, not shatters, all the shells would have to hit, blah, blah, blah. But yes, very, very high damage potential with these SAP secondaries. On the note of full pins, right now we note that the 90mm guns on the side of Lepanto, there are 12 on each side, they pin 26mm of armor, and the larger 152s pin 42mm of armor. So that is a ton of armor for their size that they go through, and it's the reason SAP is so great. Just look at the Flander. The theoretical DPM of the secondaries on that ship is pretty monstrous until you see that they're all 100mm, and 100mm guns in this game with normal 1/6 pin don't penetrate anything. 16mm of armor. So it's basically useless unless you're setting fires. The Italian secondaries, though, they're no joke. What else does Lepanto have going for it? Decent speed, maneuverability, I guess, but really great armor and the exhaust smoke generator. The match in the background is a short and a sweet one, but highlights how best to play this ship in my eyes. You can't just steam straight at the enemy and wreak havoc with your secondaries. You have to be subtle. Patient even. The secondaries are pretty delicate. They can be destroyed easily through HE spam and taking damage throughout the match, so you have to be pretty careful how you approach the enemy. Using islands, using smoke, popping out and ambushing when the time is right, and that's what we'll do in this game in the background. As for my build, we are buffing secondary range, acceleration, concealment, and secondary reload. D. Ravel is the man with basically a full brawling build and fight fire with fire. Von Hipper and Haruna round out the ensemble for a full secondary build with a range of 9.4 kilometers. I think you could get it to 9.6 or a little bit higher if you had 16-4 commanders, so if you're a wallet warrior, there you go. The next logical question would be, though, how survivable is Lepanto? Like, there has to be some downsides to the insane damage output of this ship, right? Well, it's pretty survivable. I mean, the health pool is kind of low, but throw in the 4 Italian heals we get, and the effective HP is the second best at tier 8 behind the Marlboro. And with Master Mechanic, you get 2 extra heals. So, quite nice. The armor doesn't leave a lot to complain about either. It's pretty impressive. 32mm bow with a fully wrapped icebreaker. 55mm deck that is going to troll HE spammers quite a bit. And a waterline citadel that has a slight turtleback armor scheme. It's kind of shallow, so I'm not really sure how effective that is at blocking shells coming in, but I'm sure it helps a little bit. Torp reduction is 51%, so that's incredible. There really aren't a lot of downsides to this boat at the start. Now, one thing I will point out that if you are kiting or sailing away from enemies, these back panels on the stern are shell traps. They will catch shells for devastating amounts of damage. The athwartship protection right behind it is only 25mm, so you will take full pins for tons of damage. It's a theme that has been around with the Italian battleships. Veneto and Roma are kind of the same, and now it's here on Lepanto. I've experienced taking huge damage through the keister on all 3 of these battleships when kiting away, so be careful. Or if you're fighting these guys, now you know where to aim. On to the main guns, and they're kind of mediocre in my eyes. As far as I can tell, it's a 1.6 Sigma with Italian Battleship Dispersion, so very wonky at times. You're going to fire these things and be scratching your head. But you do have a large barrel count, 12 guns, and that helps out a bit. Italian BB AP flies fast, 880 meters per second. So it's good at penetrating lots of armor at longer ranges, and it makes it easier to aim. The stock reload, though, is quite long, 33.5 seconds, and these are only 381 millimeters, so there's not a ton of overmatch potential at tier 8. Pretty small-sized guns for such a high tier. Definitely good in bad parts of the guns. The large barrel count does help. It brings you up in the top 5 for tier 8 BBDPM. The gun firing angles, though, they're not fantastic, which seems to be kind of a common trait of quad turrets in this game. Especially firing backwards, they're not good on Lepanto, so once again proving this isn't a great kiting battleship. The anti-air, pretty decent DPS actually, top 4, but a short range, 4 kilometers. Luckily for you, right now there are not a ton of legendary carriers out there, so that's good, and the DPS seems to handle tier 7 carriers just fine. The speed, 29.5. That's really not very Italian, is it? Normally Italian battleships are very, very fast, and this is actually slower than the tier 7 counterparts, Roma and Veneto, and much slower than the Marco. If you're thinking throughout this review, well, hey, Marco Polo is basically obsolete now, Marco's a Lamborghini compared to the Lepanto. It's much more agile and fast. And then finally, Lepanto has terrible concealment, so you'll need to be careful there. Definitely the concealment module, for me, I would run it. I know others would use RGA with how much brawling or pushing caps you're going to be doing, but oh man, it's just awful to be constantly spotted at 15 kilometers. 14.9 actually, I think is what it was with my build without the concealment module. Now, plenty would say right now Lepanto is probably the best tier 8 tech tree battleship. Great effective HP, great armor, great torp production, insane secondaries, good main battery DPM, and strong AA in its short range. And sure, I would agree, it is really strong right now. But in its secondary configuration, it can be hard countered just by keeping it at range. The amazing secondaries can be melted off with spam, and if left at range, Lepanto's main guns with a secondary build are mostly disappointing with an occasionally good salvo. From my experience, it's going to come down to the map you're on, and that is frustrating at times. Certain maps with Lepanto could be amazing. Like look at Haven here. Island cover is very easily abused to push up, and you can have amazing and very, very fun matches. But let's say you spawn on Crash Zone Seaside. You're going to have a lot less fun stuck out in the open water. Granted, the smoke does help you as kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card if you screw up, or to help you in a push, or simply to go dark for 45 seconds and let the secondaries farm. The smoke gives you a lot of utility and adds more to the tankiness. I did not test this with a main gun focused build. I would be curious how that works. You can let me know in the comment section down below with a little more accuracy and a little more reload. But the madness, the madness of the secondaries, I don't know why you would want to spec into anything else. They're just incredibly fun to watch ships melt. Now, Prinz Rupperecht was largely considered the strongest battleship at tier 8 previously, and it has been nerfed recently. Its secondary reload got nerfed and main battery reload was nerfed to 32 seconds, I think. But right now, I would have a hard time calling Rupprecht better than Lepanto. Sure, it has a ton of torpedoes, it has sonar and a super long range and very accurate secondary armament, but Lepanto just has a deadlier secondary armament up close. It's much more tanky and it has the smoke. I don't know. Right now, it's kind of a toss-up, but I think Lepanto is slightly overcooked, and it could very well be the best tech tree tier 8 battleship. If she continues to perform this well, I would imagine she'll be balanced out down the road. I kind of hope she doesn't, just because it is incredibly fun to play, and the Italian tech tree battleship line has always only ever been mediocre in my eyes, and to finally have a strong contender for the Regia Marina is very nice. Time will tell, but for now, if you are looking for a secondary battleship to grind, forget about the FDG, go straight for Lepanto. I would of course love to hear what you guys think, so let me know in the comment section down below, and do me a favor, hit the like button as that would greatly help the channel. Also, be sure to subscribe to not miss any future content, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.